Hello and welcome back to the stream. So today we are continue our journey with the creepypasta. Yeah, I originally planned to read another one yesterday, but yeah, as I said, I was out and it got a little bit late, so we have to do that today. And yeah, as you maybe assume by seeing the background of the chatting screen, it is a fantasy story. Nonetheless, it is, I would say, somewhat creepy, at least, because the author of the story is infamous for letting his audience in the dark for not all, but a certain amount of aspects that are part of his stories. And that is exactly what makes them so appealing, what gives them the shroud of mystery. You can interpret so many things. You can guess, you can imagine what and if, and there are so many untold stories. He's laying out a whole universe, and he filled it with life, with his stories. But he left enough room for new thoughts, for new stories, for interpretations, for being, for just being able to roam around freely in between what he has created. And the best of it, this author, and I mean, I say this purely from a perspective of valuing his literature, his work, his, I don't know how to say this in English, his inheritance maybe that he left. He was the kind guy in the sense of that he didn't bother or didn't care. No, actually, he encouraged that others would take his ideas and spin them further, develop them further, make something new out of this. So maybe it is somewhat comparable to the internet nowadays. So, for example, if you think of memes, they have their origin, but normally they don't stand for themselves. You have to know the context to cross it. So there is an original work from which they derive. For example, the one does not simply meme is would not work if you don't knew the scene in the Lord of the Ring movies or the books, and it's somewhat comparable to his works. Yeah, he he laid the ground. How do you say that? The groundwork, the basis on which so many other authors after him would build their own stories. And of course, I'm talking about, yeah, you know it, you guessed it, maybe. I'm talking about Lovecraft, or Lovecraft, how he's also pronounced. And of course, you can argue about his, or not argue, I mean, it is a problematic figure, or person he was. I don't want to go on the biography stuff, but let's just say, he's not like a white paper. There are problematic aspects to his personality, to him as person, but I don't want to go into detail, or don't want to touch this kind of topic today. I just want to read a short story of him, because this is a story, or maybe because if you take his work, his I would call it art in some sense. It had a really, or it still has a really great impact to so many other works that came after him, to many other persons, authors, that what was inspired by him. I mean, if you ever heard of the game World of Warcraft, and it is literally a pun to Lovecraft, and they incorporate so much ideas of his works. It is just an example of contemporary media that drove heavily from his ideas, and was and is still very successful with doing that. And what I love the most about his works is the fact that he shrouded everything in a kind of layers of mystery, layers of the unknown, and he plays with that. And it is, if you think about it, the greatest fear of mankind is actually anything that you don't know, the unknown, because it potentially can hold the most dangerous things, unimaginable things that you can't assess, or things that you can't, I don't know, that you can't even imagine how to deal with. So knowing nothing, or the fact that you are not enough, is probably the most frightening thing, because if you don't know about something, there's no way, or no effective way of dealing with that, if it is a bad thing. So normally you don't want variables that you don't can control, or that you are not aware of. It is especially if they are very potentially, or if they're very dangerous. And this is exactly what Lovecraft used for when he created his stories. Of course, there are a bunch of other things, but in the end, it is more or less always about something that are not feasible. Feasible is that, maybe, I don't know if it's the right word, that are not that mankind or the humans, the people hater of HD, are not able to grasp fully, and not able to deal with. Instead, they usually get mad or worse. So there are very few stories that Lovecraft created where that actually have a good, somewhat kind of good ending, or like an open ending. Usually, it is something dark. They end on a somewhat dark note, so to speak. But the story that I'm about to read is a little bit different. And when I started to read his short stories, and I stumbled upon this one, I kind of was surprised and pleased at the same time. And if you know his biography a little bit, even a little bit, and know under what circumstances he wrote his stories, I mean, how he made his living back then in the 20th century, in the beginning of the 20th century, and you read the story, you can easily imagine how this was kind of a way for him to escape reality. And exactly that is what the story is about. So let's begin. Oh yeah, and one thing before I start, he uses a lot of adjectives, a lot of words, basically, that are, I would say, for the modern reader, maybe not the first glance understandable, at least not for me, because I'm not a native in English. I mean, I'm not a native speaker, and there are so many words that are kind of like terms, or that you maybe use in the 20th century, I don't know, or that just mark you as being knowledgeable or intelligent, I don't know. So there are many words that are completely unknown to me, and I hope I pronounced them correctly. So, and also, this also other thing about Lovecraft, he made kind of fun of inventing words that you can't pronounce, because they are literally don't exist in any language. He made them up, and he he giggled about people, or not made fun. He was just amused how people would try to make sense of those words, and try to find ways to pronounce them. I mean, the most famous is the Cthulhu, the god, the elder. It is actually a word that you wouldn't be able to speak out in human language. But yeah. So, and the title of it starts with the title. It is a word that I can't pronounce. I hope I just go what I think it would be in English. It is Celephaïs, and there are two dots above the E, not the E, the I, sorry. In English it's the I, about. I think it's kind of some, you can see this in languages like New Zealand. I think they have an I with two dots above them. So I think it's pronounced Celephaïs, but I'm not sure. Sorry about that. So let's go. In a dream, Caranus saw the city in a valley, and the sea coast beyond. The snowy peak overlooked the sea, and the gaily painted galleys that sail out to the harbor toward the distant regions where the sea meets the sky. In a dream, it was also that he came by his name of Caranus, for when awake he was called by another name. Perhaps it was natural for him to dream a new name, for he was the last of his family and alone among the indifferent millions of London. So there were not many to speak to him and remind him who he had been. His money and lands were gone, and he did not care for the ways of people about him. He preferred to dream and write of his dreams. What he wrote was laughed at by those whom he shewed it, so that after a time he kept his writings to himself and finally ceased to write. The more he withdrew from the world about him, the more wonderful became his dreams, and it have been quite futile to try to describe them on paper. Caranus was not modern and did not think like others who wrote, whilst they strove to strip from life his embroidered robes of myth, and to shew it in naked ugliness the fool thing that is reality. Caranus sought for beauty alone. When truth and experience failed to reveal it, he sought it in fancy and illusion, and found it on his very doorstep, amid the nebulous memories of childhood tales and dreams. There are not many persons who know what wonders are open to them in the stories and visions of their youth. For when as children we listened and dreamed, we think but half-formed thoughts, and when as men we try to remember what are dulled and prosaic with the poison of life, but some of us awake in the night with strange phantasms of enchanted hills and gardens, of fountains that sing in the sun, of golden cliffs overhanging murmuring seas, of plains that stretch down to sleeping cities, of bronze and stone, and shadowy companies of heroes that ride caparisoned white horses along the edge of thick forests. And then we know that we have looked back through the ivory gates into that world of wonder which was ours before we were wise and unhappy. Caranus came very suddenly upon his old world of childhood. He had been dreaming of the house where he was born, the great stone house covered with ivy, where 13 generations of his fragrant Samnite ancestors had lived, and where he had hoped to die. It was moonlit light, and he had stolen out into the fragrant summer night, through gardens, down the terraces, past the great oaks of the park, and along the long wide road to the village. The village seemed very old, eaten away at the edge like the moon, which had commenced to wane, and Caranus wondered whether the peaked roof of the small houses hid sleep or death. In the streets were spears of long grass, and the window panes on either side were either broken or firmly staring. Caranus had not lingered, but had plodded on as though summoned toward some goal. He dared not disobey the summons for fear it might prove an illusion, like the urges and aspirations of waking life, which not leads to any goal. Then he had been drawn down to a lane that led from the village street toward the Channel Cliffs, and had come to the end of things, to the precipice and abyss where all the village and all the world fell abruptly into the unechoing emptiness of infinity, and where even the sky ahead was empty and unlit by the crumbling moon and disappearing stars. Fire had urged him over the precipice and into the gulf, where he had floated down, down, past dark, shapeless, undreamed dreams, faintly glowing spheres that may have been partly dreamed dreams, and laughing winged things that seemed to mock the dreamers of all the worlds. Then a rift seemed to open in the darkness before him, and he saw the city of Valley, glistening radiantly far, far below, with a background of sea and sky and a snow-capped mountain near the shore. Cranus had awakened the very moment he beheld the city, yet he knew from his brief glance that it was none other than Celephaïs in the valley of Oath Nargai, beyond the Tenerian hills, where his spirit had dwelt all the eternity of an hour one summer afternoon very long ago, when he had slipped away from his nurse and let the warm sea breeze lull him to sleep as he watched the clouds from the cliff near the village. He had protested then when they had found him waked him and carried him home, for just as he has aroused, he had been about to sail in a golden galley for those alluring regions where the sea meets the sky, and now he was equally resentful of awaking, for he had found his fabulous city after 40 very years. But 3 nights after Caranus came again to Celephaïs, as before he dreamed first of the village that was asleep or dead, and of the abyss down which one must float silently. Then the rift appeared again, and he beheld the glittering minarets of the city, and saw the graceful galleys riding at an anchor at the blue harbor, and watched the ginkgo trees of Mount Erin swaying in the sea breeze. But this time he was not snatched away, and like a winged being settled gradually over a grassy hillside, till finally his feet rested gently on the turf. He had indeed come back to the valley of Nargai and the splendid city of Celephaïs. Down the hill, amid scented grasses and brilliant flowers, walked Caranus over the bubbling Naraxa on the small wooden bridge where he had carved his name so many years ago, and through walls discolored, nor the polished bronze statues upon them tarnished. And Caranus saw that he need not tremble lest the things he knew be vanished, for even the sentries on the ramparts were the same and still as young as he remembered them. When he entered the city, past the bronze gates and over the onyx pavements, the merchants and camel drivers greeted him as he had never been away, and it was the same at the Turkish temple at Nafholat, where the orchid-wreathed priest told him that there is no time in of Nargai, but only perpetual youth. Then Caranus walked through the street of pillars to the seaboard wall, where gathered the traders and sailors and strange harbor men from the regions where the sea meets the sky. There he stayed long, gazing out over the bright far places over the water. And he gazed also up on Mount Erin, rising regularly from the shore, its lower slopes green with swaying trees and its white summit touching the sky. More than ever, Cronus wished to sail in the galley to the far places of which he had heard so many strange tales. He sought again the captain who had agreed to carry him so long ago. He found the man at the sitting on the same chest of spices he had set upon before, and Aphib seemed orders to the oarsmen, commenced to sail out in the billowy Cyrenian sea that leads to the sky. For several days they glided undulatingly over the water, till finally they came to the horizon, where the sea meets the sky. Here the galley paused not at all, but floated easily in the blue of the sky among fleecy clouds tinted with rose, and far beneath the keel Cranus could see strange lands and rivers and cities of surpassing beauty spread indolently in the sunshine, which seemed never to lessen or disappear. At length Aphib told him that their journey was near its end, and that they would soon enter the harbor of Seranian, the pink marble city of clouds, which is built on the ethereal coast where the west wind flows into the sky. But as the highest of the city's carven towers came into sight, there was a sound somewhere in space, and Cronus awakened in his London garret. For many months after that, Cronus sought the marvelous city of Celephaïs and its sky-bound galleys in vain, and though his dreams carried him to many churches and unheard-of places, no one whom he met could tell him how to find off Nargai beyond the Tenerian hills. One night he went flying over dark mountains where there were faint, lone campfires at a great distance apart, and strange shaggy herds with tinkling bells on the ladders. In the wildest part of his hilly country, so remote that few men could ever have seen it, he found a hideously ancient wall of causeway of stone zigzagging along the ridges and valleys, too gigantic ever to have risen by human hands, and of such a length that neither end of it could be seen. Beyond that wall, in grey dawn, he came to a land of quaint gardens and cherry trees. And when the sun rose, he beheld such beauty of red and white flowers, green foliage and lawns, white paths, diamond brooks, blue lacquettes, carven bridges, and red-roofed pagodas, that he for a moment forgot Celephaïs in sheer delight. But he remembered it again when he walked down a white path toward the red-roofed pagoda, and would have questioned people of the land about it, had he not found that there were no people there, but only birds and bees and butterflies. On another night, Corinne walked up a damp stone spiral stairway endlessly, and he came to a tower windowed overlooking a mighty plain and river lit by the full moon. And a silent city that spread away from the river bank, he thought he beheld some feature of arrangement which he had known before. He would have descended and asked the way to of Nargai, had not a fearsome aurora sputtered up from some remote place beyond the horizon, showing the ruin and antiquity of the city, and the stagnation of the reedy river, and the death lying upon that land, as it had lain since King Kianarotales came home from his conquests to the vengeance of the gods. So Cronus sought fruitlessly for the marvelous city of Celephaïs and its galleys that sailed to Serenian in the sky. Meanwhile, seeing many wonders, and once barely escaping from the high priest not to be described, which wears a yellow silken mask over its face, and dwells alone in a prehistoric stone monastery, and the cold desert plateau of Ling. In time he grew so impatient of the bleak intervals of day that he began buying drugs in order to increase his periods of sleep. Hashish helped a great deal, and once sent him to a part of space where form does not exist, but where glowing gazes study the secrets of existence. And a violet-colored gas told him that his part of space was outside what he had called infinity. The gas had not heard of planets or organisms before, but identified Cronus merely as one from the infinity where matter, energy, and gravitation exist. Cronus was now very anxious to return to minaret that studied Celephaïs and increased his doses of drugs. But eventually he had no more money left and could buy no drugs. Then one summer day he was turned out of his garret and wandered aimlessly through the streets, drifting over a bridge to a place where the houses grew thinner and thinner, and it was there that fulfillment came. And he met the cottage of knights come from Celephaïs to bear him thither forever. Handsome knights they were, astride roan horses and clad in shining armor with tabards of cloth of gold, curiously emblazoned. So numerous were they that Cronus almost mistook them for an army, but the leader told him were sent in his honor, since it was he who had created of Nargai in his dreams, on which account he was now to be appointed its chief god forevermore. Then they gave Cronus a horse and placed him at the head of the cavalcade, and all rode majestically through the dawns of Surrey and onward toward the region where Cronus and his ancestors were born. It was very strange, but as the riders went on, they seemed to gallop back through time. For whenever they passed through a village in this twilight, they saw only horses and villages as saucer of man before him might have seen, and sometimes they saw knights on horseback with small companies of retainers. When it grew dark, they travelled more swiftly, till soon they were flying uncannily as if in the air. In the dim dawn they came up in the village which Cronus had seen alive in his childhood, and asleep or dead in his dream. It was alive now, and early villagers courtesied as the horseman clattered down the street and turned off into the lane that ends in the in the abyss of dream. Cranus had previously entered the abyss of only at night and wondered what it would look like by day. So he watched anxiously as the column approached its brink, just as they galloped up the rising ground to the precipice. A golden glare came somewhere out of the east and hid all the landscape in its engulfing draperies. The abyss was now a seething chaos of roseate and Silurian splendor, and invisible voices sang exultantly as the knight's entourage plunged over the edge and floated gracefully down past glittering clouds and silvery coruscations. Endlessly down, the horsemen floated, their chargers pawing the ether as if galloping over golden sands. And then the luminous vapors spread apart to reveal a greater brightness, the brightness of the city Celephaïs, and the sea coast beyond, and the snowy peak overlooking the sea, and the gaily painted galleys that sail out of the harbor toward distant regions where the sea meets the sky. And Cranus resigned thereafter over Ophnargai and all the neighboring regions of Dream, and held his court alternately in Celephaïs and in his cloud-fashioned Serenian. He reigns there still, and will reign happily forever, though below the cliffs at Innsmouth the channeled heights played mockingly with the body of a tramp who had stumbled through the half-deserted village at dawn, played mockingly and cast upon the rocks by ivy-covered travel towers, where notably fat and especially offensive millionaire brewer enjoys the purchased atmosphere of extinct nobility. Okay, that was the story. And the last paragraph, especially, was a pun of another story of Lovecraft. I mean, we played The Shadows over Innsmouth, and there's a short story to it that is the origin of the game itself, so even maybe this is a short story and can be seen like can be treated as something that is that has not relations to other stories of him. It's more or less takes place in the same universe as the name of Innsmouth, and maybe even other names that I'm not aware of unmistakably reminds us. Yeah, and it is super. It is. I only understood while reading the story, I would say 75%, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, because I had to concentrate so much on not misspelling words, and I misspelled maybe lots of words. Let's be honest. So there are so many words that I don't know that I would have to look up. But still, more or less, I got what the story is about, of course. And the first time I read it, I don't know. I just I think I fell in love with his writings. It is what it is. this man was really poor when he lived back then, and he had literally nothing but his writings. And to make things worse, he only got famous posthumous. So after he died, he actually got famous. But when he lived, he was poor as fuck, and not many people actually, how do you say that? Value what he created, valued. Of course, there were people that, I mean, fans are fans, but it is nothing like today. He was basically unknown, and he was one, I would say, next to Edgar Allan Poe, the most influential short story writer in the 20th century, at least pertaining the horror genre, or the, I don't know, fantasy, fictional stories. And he created the cosmic horror, the genre. So yeah, and this story is a little bit out of place, or a little bit special. If you read the other stories, they are much more darker, and the protagonists of those stories usually don't end well. Yeah. So this is, I think, by the story he tried to just escape reality, because reality sucked back when he lived, at least for him. And he literally dreamed himself a better world. Like we would maybe nowadays watch a movie series, or I don't know, read a book, try to escape reality through media or through any other thing that kind of distract us from our everyday life and problems that come with it. Yeah, and I kind of like the stories, those kind of stories that he wrote. And he also he, as I said, he all or a good amount of his stories take place in the same universe. And if you read enough stories, it's like, I don't know, reading Stephen King, for example. There are so many things that are written between the lines, and the more you read of his works, the more you know of his universe that he created. I think the entertaining it is to read a story of his, because you can connect so many dots, and always kind of get a snippet of this universe, a glimpse in what he created in his thoughts, in his dreams. I really love that. So this was more of a, I would say this was like more of a fantasy story. But yeah, the last paragraph about Innsmouth, kind of always is like a shadow that is being cast upon the whole scenery, and I don't want to say it ends on a foul on a kind of somewhat dark note, but it reminds us a little bit, if you read other stories, that there is more than just marveling and wondrous worlds, and that you can lose yourself in. There's always kind of, where light, where there's light, but there's also always shadow or in his stories, and we get reminded of this through various means. Yeah, and I'm not sure about the last paragraph, because I just read too few stories and can't remember everything that I've read so far. But if I find another one that is relatively short, I will read it, of course. The story, by the way, was written in 1922, and I'm everything but not an expert when it comes to Lovecraft, or I just enjoy reading his stories. So if you want to know more about him, just I don't know, Google him, or there are so many documentaries on YouTube that you can watch, and there are so many TV shows and series. Media in general that are tell stories of him, like the Cabinet of the Curiosities, for example, also literally featured some of his stories. Maybe I read one of them. Not sure. Yeah, but I think it is the best if you read his stories, if you are interested in it, because they kind of are not by the author itself. They are not meant to be adapted in some kind of other media, because one of the major things of his stories was exactly not being able to make sense of certain things, not being able to grasp them, not being able to even imagine them, because our brain, the capabilities of humans are not able to, I don't know, for example, imagine what infinity would look like, or it is just a barrier that we can't cross per definition, because we are limited in our capabilities. So, and the moment you capture that such things on screen, the magic is gone. So that is a reason why he used many words in his writings to describe, or rather not describe, things, to kind of dance around things that we just can't imagine. And that is what his stories made are so intriguing and fascinating, I think. For me personally, it is that is one of the things. So you always left in wonder or fear, or you always have to think about things, and can fill the gaps, or try at least to fill them and make sense of them. And it's it's always kind of enough to not get boring by the story, or but still not enough to completely fill the gaps and completely make sense of everything. It's a very delicate. I mean, he knew what he was doing, I think, and that is exactly why he actually, in the aftermath, got famous after he died. And it's a shame that he didn't. I mean, among so many other artists and authors, that he did not kind of was famous when he still lived. So yeah, I just wanted to bring you, or show you, or tell you about this author. I mean, maybe you knew about him. I mean, Lovecraft is not an unknown figure in history, so it is, especially in the American literature, he's quite well known. But in my country, in the country where I grew up, it was not on. I mean, of course, it's heavily influenced by English, but it was not something. It was not an author that I mean, I knew from the start of being a kid, or anything, like, for example, The Wizard of Oz, or there are other. I mean, we have our own stories and authors where I live, so it took me a while to being introduced to this man. So if it's the same for you, I hope you enjoyed the story. And the best thing, as I said at the beginning of the stream, he did not care about his, I would say, how we would call it today, copyright. So he encouraged others to take his stories and make something out of it, build up on them, make more of it, expand the universe that he laid the groundwork for, or the floor for. So you can actually find his stories if you Google, and you can read them yourselves. But I highly encourage you to, I don't know, buy a book, for example, that are make sense of his stories, like in a way, for example, that it is gives you context. His biography, because yeah, he lived a good amount of time ago. So yeah, it's good to know a little bit more aside from just his stories, to better be able to better understand them. Yeah, okay, I don't want to hold you up any further. So I don't know what I will do next, and if I do something tomorrow. I think if I do something tomorrow, it would be gaming. We should just continue with any of the games. I don't know. Maybe I continue with Dave the Diver. I have to think of it. Yeah, we will see. So that's it for today, I guess. I hope you enjoyed it, and please let me know in the comments if you, I don't know, have a super interesting offer that I should read a short story of, or I don't know, no offers, creepypasta that I should read, or even, I don't know, anything. I would be happy, and always be happy to yeah, expand my own knowledge or my own view of the world, and there's so many stories out there. So yeah, with that being said, have lovely dreams, and always, as always, stay safe. We see each other around. Bye bye.